Right now, as you watch this, the entire modern world is balanced on a strip of water a few kilometers wide. Everything you own that runs on energy, your car, your phone, the lights in your room, trucks that carry your food, the factories that made everything around you. A huge share of the fuel behind all of it passed, at some point, through one single narrow channel of sea. A passage so tight that ships must move through it in careful, disciplined lines, watched from both shores. A passage where, on some days, warships of the world's great powers and the fast boats of a defiant nation have drifted so close that the sailors could see each other's faces. 1/5 of the world's oil, through a gap you could sail across in an afternoon. It is the single most important stretch of water on the planet, and also one of the most dangerous. A place where a single incident, one mine, one missile, one miscalculation could send the price of energy surging across every continent, tip economies into crisis, and pull great powers toward war. The whole vast, complicated machine of the global economy, with its trillions of dollars and its endless networks, depends on ships crossing this one thin blue line without being stopped. And here is what almost no one who watches the news about this place ever sees. Beyond the warships and the radar and the headlines, this is one of the most beautiful places on Earth. There are beaches here where the sand is blood red and dissolves into the waves like spilled ink. There are valleys painted in bands of crimson and gold and violet, colored by minerals arranged by no human hand. There are caves of shimmering salt deep beneath the hills, and desert mountains that fall straight into a turquoise sea, and a fortress of red stone that has watched this water for 500 years. So here is the most militarized, most watched, most dangerous choke point in the world. And here, in the same breath, is a place of red beaches, rainbow valleys, and salt caves. Quiet, strange, and almost unbearably beautiful. Both of those things are true at the same time. Neither one is an exaggeration. The question this place forces on us is one that gets sharper every year. What happens when the lifeline of the entire modern world runs through a single narrow gate, a gate that belongs to no one, that any hand could try to close, and that could not be replaced if it were lost? Come with us now, beyond the headlines, to the edge of the sea, where danger, history, and hidden beauty all meet in the narrowest place on Earth. This is the Strait of Hormuz. Start with the geography, because the geography is the whole story. The Strait of Hormuz is the mouth of the Persian Gulf, the narrow neck of water where the Gulf empties into the open ocean. On one side lies Iran, on the other, the tip of the Arabian Peninsula, belonging to Oman. Between them, the sea pinches to its narrowest. At the tightest point, only about 33 kilometers separate the two shores, and the strait is the only way in or out. Every drop of oil, every cargo of gas, every ship leaving the ports of the Gulf for the wider world has to pass through this one gate. There is no other route, there is no back door. Now look closer, because 33 kilometers still sounds like a lot of room. It isn't. Huge tankers cannot sail just anywhere. They need deep water and safe, agreed lanes. So the actual shipping channels through Hormuz are far narrower than the strait itself, only a couple of kilometers wide in each direction, one lane in, one lane out, separated by a thin buffer of open sea. That means the most valuable cargo on the planet, the oil that runs half the world, is funneled every single day into a pair of thin, predictable lines, full view of both shores. Think about what that does. In the open ocean, a ship can go anywhere, and to threaten it, you would have to find it first. Here, you already know exactly where it will be. Predictable routes invite surveillance. Surveillance invites strategy. And so the shores of this strait have become one of the most watched, wired, and armed stretches of coastline anywhere on Earth. Radar stations sweep the channel day and night. Patrol boats shadow the tankers. Fast attack craft, small, quick, designed to swarm in numbers, wait in coves along the coast. Missiles sit in batteries, able to reach clear across the water, so that most of the strait lies within range of the shore. Drones watch from above. On both sides, the sensors never sleep, and the radars stay locked on one another, hour after hour, year after year. There have been moments here that capture the whole strange tension of the place. Times when warships of a distant superpower and the small patrol boats of Iran passed so close in the narrow channel that the sailors on each could see the faces of the others through their binoculars, could hear each other's warnings crackling across the radio over the sound of the waves. Enormous consequences and tiny distances pressed together in the same few kilometers of sea. That is what makes this passage so volatile. Everything here happens at close range, where there is no time and no room, and where a single wrong move cannot easily be taken back. Whoever controls this gate holds a hand on the throat of the world's energy, and that single fact, hold on to it, is why this thin strip of water matters more than almost any border on the map. Now the numbers, because they are almost hard to believe. Around 20 million barrels of oil pass through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That is roughly a fifth of all the oil the world consumes. 1 barrel in 5 for the entire planet squeezed through this one channel. Along with it goes a huge share of the world's traded liquefied natural gas, and most of it is heading east. A great majority of the crude that flows through Hormuz is bound for the economies of Asia, for China, for India, for Japan, for South Korea, which means the factories and cities of half the world run, in a very real sense, on ships that must first thread this needle. There is no replacing it. Pipelines exist that can carry a little of the Gulf's oil overland, bypassing the strait, but only a fraction, nowhere near enough to make up for the sea route if it closed. If Hormuz were shut, even for a few weeks, there is simply no other way to move that ocean of energy. The oil would still be in the ground, the tankers would still be in the ports, and none of it could reach the world. And that is the paradox at the heart of this place. We think of the global economy as something vast and unstoppable, a web of trillions of dollars spread across every continent. And yet so much of it still depends on ships passing through a gap a few kilometers wide between two watchful shores. Here, power does not come from owning the oil or from building the greatest navy. It comes from something much simpler and much harder to counter: the ability to interrupt. In this narrow place, you do not need to conquer anything. You only need the power to stop everyone else. That is a kind of leverage the modern world has never quite figured out how to disarm. And people have understood the value of this gate for a very, very long time. Because this is not a new story. Long before oil, this same strait was one of the great crossroads of world trade. the point where the sea routes of the Indian Ocean funneled into the Gulf, carrying the treasure of the East, spices from India, silk from China, pearls from the Gulf itself, the finest in the world, silver, incense, horses. For centuries, whoever sat at the mouth of the Gulf grew rich, taxing and controlling that flow. Exactly the way Venice controlled the Mediterranean and Petra controlled the incense roads. There was even a wealthy trading kingdom here, centered on these islands, so famous for its riches that an old saying spread across the region. If the world were a ring, then Hormuz would be the jewel in it. Then, in the early 16th century, a new power arrived from the far side of the world. The Portuguese, having sailed around Africa and into the Indian Ocean for the first time, understood at once what this strait was worth, and they seized it. Under their fearsome Admiral Afonso de Albuquerque, they stormed the island of Hormuz, and to hold it, they built a fortress of red stone right at the water's edge, its thick walls facing the channel, guarding one of the most valuable passages in the known world. For over a century, from this red fort, a European empire on the other side of the planet held its hand on the gate of the Gulf and grew rich on the tolls and the trade that flowed through it. Ships approached these waters carrying spices, silk, pearls and silver from ports, scattered across the whole Indian Ocean, and all of it passed beneath these walls. And that fortress is still there, weathered now, half-ruined, red earth and coral stone crumbling together, its empty arches framing the sea, the sound of waves washing through courtyards the soldiers left long ago. Empires rose and fell. The Portuguese were driven out at last by a Persian Shah with English help. The trade shifted over the centuries, from spice to oil, but the fort still stands on its red shore, watching the same water it was built to watch 500 years ago, a quiet witness to the one thing that has never changed here. Whoever holds this strait holds something the whole world wants. The cargo changes. The hunger for the gate does not. But let's do now what almost no news report ever does. Let's forget, for a while, the warships and the missiles, and go ashore. It's because the islands that guard this strait are among the strangest and most beautiful places in the entire region. Begin with Hormuz Island itself, the small island that gave the strait its name. From a distance it looks dry, bare, unremarkable. Up close, it is unlike almost anywhere on Earth. This is a volcanic island, and the ground is stained with an astonishing palette of minerals, layers of iron oxide, sulfur and salt that have colored the hills in vivid bands of crimson, gold, ochre, and deep violet. They call one place here the Rainbow Valley, and standing in it feels like standing inside a painting. Slopes of blood-red earth beside ridges of orange and gold, streaked with dark volcanic rock, like brushstrokes across an enormous canvas. No one arranged these colors. The planet did, over millions of years of heat and pressure and time. There are beaches on this island where the sand is deep red, and the red bleeds into the sea as the waves wash over it, staining the water like ink. The red soil is so pure and so fine that people here have traditionally used it. It becomes pigment, and in a local tradition is even mixed into food. And beneath the colorful hills lies something stranger still. Caves of salt. This whole island sits on top of a vast dome of salt, pushed up slowly from deep underground. And where water has worked its way in, it has carved out shimmering caverns, walls of white and amber crystal, cool and silent, glinting gold and pink in the faint light, growing grain by grain across the centuries. A rainbow desert above, a labyrinth of salt below, on an island best known to the world as a military watchpost. And Hormuz is not alone. Beside it lies its far larger neighbor, Qeshm, the biggest island in the strait, a long stone gate stretched along the Iranian coast, and a place of quiet wonders of its own. Qeshm is so geologically remarkable that it holds the Middle East's first UNESCO Global Geopark, a landscape of pale twisting canyons, salt domes, and valleys carved by water that vanished ages ago, where the rock reads like an open book of the Earth's deep history. Along its shores breathe green mangrove forests, wading in the tidal shallows, alive with birds. And in the old harbor towns, you can still see one of the most beautiful pieces of human ingenuity in the Gulf. The wind towers, tall, slender catchers rising above the rooftops, built to reach up into the breeze and pull cool air down into the houses below. Natural air conditioning invented centuries ago by people who learned to live with ferocious heat long before electricity. And on Qeshm survived something the world thought worth protecting all on its own. The craft of building the lenge, the great wooden dhow, along the shore. In traditional shipyards, craftsmen still raise the curved wooden ribs of these vessels from the sand and shape their planks by hand, using techniques passed from master to apprentice for generations. The same kind of ship that once carried Gulf trade to Arabia, India, and the coast of East Africa. The knowledge of how to build and sail them is held so precious that it sits on UNESCO's list of the living heritage of humanity. In the shadow of the radar stations, men still build ships the way their great-grandfathers did. Now cross the strait to the other shore, to Oman, because the far side of Hormuz holds the most dramatic landscape of all, and the creature that is the secret heart of this whole story. The northern tip of Oman is a peninsula called Muzandam, and it juts into the strait like a great broken wall of stone. Here, the desert mountains do not stop at the coast. They plunge straight down into the sea, and over ages the water has flooded the valleys between them, creating deep, narrow inlets that wind between towering cliffs. The Arabian fjords is one of the most striking coastlines on the planet. Sheer walls of pale rock rising from water that shifts from deep blue to bright turquoise, traditional boats gliding through the silence, small fishing villages tucked into hidden coves reachable only by sea. High above it all rises the peninsula's tallest peak, Jebel Harim, so old that its bare stone is studded with the fossils of coral and seashells, proof that these desert heights were once the floor of an ancient ocean. Clinging to these cliffs is one of the rarest animals in Arabia, the Arabian tar, small, sturdy, wild mountain goat found nowhere else on Earth but these northern mountains, with a thick mane and backswept horns, built to survive where almost nothing else can. The tar lives on the steepest, most broken ground, the narrow ledges and vertical faces where no predator can follow, moving with total sure-footedness across gaps that would kill anything less adapted. Survives on the sparse plants that cling to pockets of soil between the rocks. In a fragile world shaped by heat and wind and stone. And it is endangered now, its numbers thin, its range shrinking, a creature holding on, quite literally, to the narrowest of edges. There could be no better emblem for this place. Everything about the Strait of Hormuz is about survival in the tightest of spaces. The tankers threading their thin lanes, the sailors passing between the guns, the whole world's energy squeezing through a gap a few kilometers wide. And there, on the cliffs above the strait, is an animal that has made its entire existence out of exactly that: balance, precision, and the ability to hold on where there is almost no room at all. The tar on its ledge and the world on its narrow channel are doing the same impossible thing, living on the edge with no margin to spare. Which brings us back to the water, and to why, as this film is made, Strait of Hormuz is once again one of the most dangerous places on Earth. For decades, this strait has been a pressure point that the world watches with held breath. Iran sits along its entire northern shore, and Iran has long made clear that if it were ever pushed hard enough, attacked, or strangled by sanctions, it might try to close Hormuz altogether and choke off the flow of oil to the world. On the other side, the United States and its allies have kept powerful naval forces in and around the Gulf for years, precisely to keep the strait open. Warships escort tankers. Coalitions patrol the lanes. It is a standoff that has simmered, flared, and cooled again for a generation. And in 2026, it flared as badly as it ever has. A conflict between Iran and both the United States and Israel escalated into open military action across the region. In the middle of it, Iranian forces declared the Strait of Hormuz closed and warned that any ship attempting to pass could be attacked. There were strikes on tankers in and around the strait. Shipping slowed. Insurance costs soared. Global oil prices jumped as the world confronted, once again, the nightmare it has feared for 50 years. This one narrow channel might actually be shut. Agreements were reached to reopen the passage, then tested and strained by further incidents. As this is written, the strait is open. The tension has not gone away. It lies over the water like a drawn line, and no one can say with certainty when or whether it will truly ease. It is worth saying clearly, because the headlines rarely do. The people most trapped by all of this are the ones with the least say in it. The crews of the tankers, ordinary sailors from all over the world who must steer their enormous vulnerable ships through those narrow lanes with weapons trained on them from both sides, hoping that this crossing, like the last one, ends without incident. The people of the Gulf and of Asia, whose fuel and prices and livelihoods swing with every rumor from this strait, and the fishermen and villagers of both shores, like the people of the remote Omani village, at the very tip of Musandam, who still speak Kumzari, a rare language found almost nowhere else on earth, blending Persian and Arabic and older tongues, carried down through centuries of trade across these very waters. They have lived beside this strait for longer than any of the current quarrels, fishing the same water, and they will, one hopes, still be there long after the current tension is history. So stand on the red shore of Hormuz Island at the end of the day by the old Portuguese fort and look out at the strait. The water is calm and gold in the low sun. A tanker is moving slowly through the distant lane, riding low and heavy with the oil that will light cities on the other side of the world. Somewhere out there, radar is sweeping and patrol boats are watching. And on both shores, the sensors are locked onto the channel, as they have been for years. Behind you, The rainbow hills are deepening to crimson. Beneath them, the salt caves sit in their cool silence. And across the water, on the cliffs of Musandam, a tar is picking its way along a ledge in the last light. The fort watches the water. The water carries the world. None of it is decided. The strait may stay open, quietly carrying a fifth of the world's oil, year after year, as it has for so long. Or one mine, one missile, one order given in anger may close it and send a shock through every economy on Earth. The great powers may keep their uneasy balance, or they may not. That is the strange and frightening truth of this place, that so much of the world's fate hangs on such a thin thread of water, watched over by guns, and by an old red fort, and by a wild goat on a cliff. But this too is true, and worth carrying with you. Even here, in the most contested, most dangerous, most watched passage on the planet, the red sand still bleeds into the waves at sunset. The mineral valleys still glow like a painting no one has named. The salt caves still shimmer in the dark. The wind towers still catch the breeze, and the shipwrights still build their wooden boats, and the fishermen of Qumzar still go out at dawn. Along one of the tensest strips of sea on Earth, the world still, quietly, insists on being beautiful. Take a breath. Stay a while. The tide will move through the strait tonight, carrying its tankers between the guns, whether the world is holding its breath or not. This has been Where on Earth. Thank you for watching, and until the next journey.